Hello and welcome to the Imaging Wire Show. My name is Brian Casey. I'm managing editor of the Imaging Wire. Got a great episode for you today. Our topic is interpretation efficiency in radiology. And our guests are Amy Thompson of Signify Research, Dr. Melissa Davis of Yale University, Dr. Eric Pepin of Radiology Associates of North Texas, Dr. Nicholas Said of Duke University, and Dr. Long Tu of Yale University. Everybody, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
So let's start with introductions. Amy, can you go first?
Yeah, of course. So, Amy Thompson, I'm the author of the white paper. I'm a research manager at Signify Research, which is an independent market research firm.
Very good. Dr. Davis?
I am Melissa Davis. I'm the Vice Chair for Medical Informatics Department at Yale University.
Very good. Dr. Pepin?
I'm Eric Pepin. I'm a body imager at Radiology Associates in North Texas. Previously worked as an informaticist in other institutions.
Very good. Dr. Said, how about you?
I'm Nicholas Said. I'm the Vice Chair of Radiology Informatics at Duke University.
Okay. And Dr. Tu?
I'm a emergency radiologist and neuroradiologist at Yale, and I do some educational and investigational work in efficiency.
All right. Very good. Well, thanks everybody for being with us today. Really do appreciate it. So, Amy, you mentioned the white paper. So we're going to be talking today about a new report that Signify Research has produced about improving radiologist efficiency. And as part of the report, you interviewed some of the key opinion leaders that are on our call today. Can you talk a little bit about the report? I mean, in the past, you've talked a lot about cloud packs, but this year's focus is on efficiency. Why the shift?
Yeah, definitely. Cloud remains a very big discussion within the radiology industry. So it's not about the fact that the cloud discussion has moved on. It's still very much central. However, against the backdrop, against the workforce shortages, increased attrition rates across institutions, burnouts is a very real challenge amongst not only radiology, but institutions and other specialties too. Couple that with increasing volumes, the discussion around interpretation efficiency is paramount and very centered to not only RSNA coming up, but also 2026 looking forward and beyond. So it felt like a really good time to delve into what institutions and radiologists could do to really optimize their time and their interpretation workflow.
Very good. Well, we all read about how severe the workforce crisis is and its relationship to burnout. Let's hear from some of our panelists about the impact that the workforce crisis is having on individual practices and the care you provide. Dr. Davis, what are you seeing at your facility?
Yeah, I think that everybody is really under the gun a bit when it comes to workforce. And this is not just for radiologists, it's also for our staff that help us, like our technologists, our sonographers, even our administrative staff. And so when it comes to how this is impacting us, I think all of us are feeling the pressure of increasing volumes with decreasing personnel. And that means that we're also feeling a pressure to read faster and read more. At some point, there's a breaking point between efficiency, quality, and safety when we're under those types of pressures. And when your individual radiologist is feeling that on a day-to-day basis, or when your technologist is feeling that on a day-to-day basis, that can really harm their morale and cause increased burnout. And I think we're seeing that in our institution, and all of my colleagues that I talk to are also seeing it at their institutions. And so our job as leaders is to really figure out how to put a box around that and protect our staff so that they can do quality work going forward.
For sure. Dr. Tu, what are you experiencing? What kind of things are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I can only just concur with what Dr. Davis referred to, which is that there's increasing pressure and this tension between wanting to do good work and then also being able to do sustainably. I think many of our our radiologist staff are feeling that they're near their limit in ability to contribute to the volume and the velocity of work that is coming through. And so I think creative and differing sorts of solutions are welcome, given that challenge, simply because asking people to work more, even paying people to work additionally, is not, it can only go so far. And so we definitely need something else.
Yeah, for sure. So, Amy, let's talk a little bit about the report that Signify Research produced. And can you talk about maybe how you went about doing it and the methodology and what some of your major findings were?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the white paper, we conducted 6 primary interviews with some of the panelists on the show, or on the video, but also some others, all within US-based healthcare institutions, really digging into their experience of using technology and how that can promote and support, but also depending on the workflow, the challenges that they face in interpretation efficiency. I think for me, one of the biggest findings that came out of it is really around the importance of interoperability. And without it, really the requirement for real significant manual intervention from radiologists when interpreting the imaging, needing to pull, and find additional information in, the EHR, for example, dictating and, manually entering in findings into the reporting solution, really does drive, additional time that could be automated depending on obviously the solutions and the integrations within systems.
Because part of the problem is that radiologists are using different software applications for different parts of their job, right? I mean, they might have one for viewing, they might have one for the work list, they might have one for reporting. Is that part of the problem?
Absolutely, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem. There probably isn't going to be a situation where one system does everything a radiologist or a hospital needs. It's more about how those systems connect into each other. And that's more the challenge. There's a lot of disconnect between those individual systems where you are correct. There's probably a minimum of 3 systems a radiologist would use. And that obviously could increase further depending on their workflow and the additional systems they may have, or if they're outsourcing or using teleradiology systems as well. And that's where it can compound and create additional challenges.
And one of the things that I noticed in reading the report was, and I don't know if this is something that came out of your report or was as a reference, but that a radiologist's mouse movement will travel like over a mile in the course of a reading session. I mean, that seems crazy to me.
Yes, it wasn't a study that we did, it was a study that we found and was conducted by other individuals within the field. But yes, it is shocking when you actually see it displayed and some of the visual mapping that shows actually the different concentration of areas where the mouse travels over an 8-hour shift is mind-blowing in actually how you might be able to streamline that through automation.
Yeah. Well, let's go talk to some of our panelists again. What, Dr. Saeed, could you talk about the frustrations that clinicians have with legacy imaging offerings and how these might be stifling interpretation efficiency?
Yeah, so a lot of the legacy imaging offerings that, we have utilized and I have utilized in my career, the way they stifle kind of efficiency through our routine workflow is due to the interoperability issues that were mentioned in the report, which to me is probably the number one problem. A lot of, these solutions, while, the new generation solutions may have a lot of fancy tools and everything, um, there is a little bit of a conflict when it comes to developing a solution that will work effectively and efficiently with those other applications that were, required to utilize. And so, if you're dealing with a PAC system that has, more, legacy, technology or legacy tools, that will only complicate that problem. So, to me, what was mentioned in the report, the fact that interoperability is paramount, is what we experience in our department, and those are areas that require additional effort to mitigate.
Dr. Pepin, let's hear from you on your perspective. Do you see these legacy systems as kind of slowing things down a little bit?
Yeah, I think a lot of legacy systems, they really didn't scale the way that the medical science scaled, or with the demands of utilization, how they've increased over the last decades. Things that we used to relegate to an advanced visualization system or a dedicated workstation that you'd carve out time of your day to do this one thing, that's now commonplace, and it's stuff, a lot of stuff that should be done routinely and part of the regular interpretation session. And so if your legacy system can't handle that, then you end up with these interoperability issues. Um, along with the interoperability, there's a ton of variance that happens, whether it's on the clinical side of the acquisition or at different facilities. And again, that comes to, can things come together and play nicely? And we really see that doesn't come together. And as everyone keeps mentioning, the radiologists, they serve as the interchange between different computer systems that in 2025 should be able to communicate seamlessly.
Yeah, for sure. Now, Dr. Tu, you actually wrote a book on radiologist efficiency, and it's got a number of suggestions. Can you maybe like talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So the book was a venture to basically consolidate information, practical tips, practical wisdom on how individual radiologists can optimize their workflow and the workflows around them to basically meet this challenge of our workforce shortages, increasing volumes, and increasing demands on their time. So it examines basically every single part of the radiologist workflow, from acquisition, workflow orchestration, interpretation, reporting, communication, and then orchestration level on top of that, and at the practice level. And basically, there's a number of concepts that individuals radiologists can employ across each of those, and an impact. And a lot of it has to do with using our time and our expertise as efficiently as possible, doing the things that only we can do, trying to automate as much as possible, and prioritizing efficiency-oriented skills, workflow-oriented skills, similarly with the conventionally taught priorities of medical knowledge, accuracy, and patient-facing care. And that efficiency is critical for the sort of workplace that we find ourselves in now.
Very good. Now, Amy, we've been talking about imaging technology as a hindrance, but there's also, I mean, it can also help solve the workforce crisis. Can you talk a little bit about some of the findings in the report that point to how we can use technology to kind of help us out of this conundrum?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think fundamentally, technology has the potential to be the answer. Where, we discussed it in the white paper around the opportunity to optimize the existing investment, supporting hanging protocols, and various other, tasks and mechanisms of the interpretation workflow. I think really importantly, though, one of the points that we made in the white paper is although that technology has the potential to be the answer, and I do phrase it like that because it's really critical that providers also assess the current workflow before they, overlay technology. Technology alone is not the answer. You also need to make sure you're reviewing your existing processes are being optimized before adding technology. Otherwise, it could actually amplify it to a greater extent. But based on the workforce and the volume of new radiologists coming in, technology is the opportunity to bridge that gap between the resource and the demand, most importantly.
Very good. Dr. Said, can you talk about how an increase in interpretation efficiency would impact you and your colleagues?
It's going to impact us as far as what Dr. Davis spoke about. We are facing, pressures to increase volume, pressures to be an increased valuable part of the patient care experience. And so finding any avenue to improve efficiency so that we can deliver on those, demands in the overall health system is huge. And some of those, items, I think like, Dr. Tu had mentioned, can be relatively simple. And so, for example, he mentioned the radiologist needs to do what they are trained to do and what they're specialized in doing. I'm a musculoskeletal trained radiologist. I need to be looking at knee, shoulder MRIs. I need to be looking at those things and not be bogged down with some of the other inefficient, repetitive tasks. And so anything that I can do to keep my focus on the patient who's presented to me on the screen is beneficial. And so that's why we employ, several tools to achieve that goal.
Very good. Dr. Tu, can you talk a bit about how tools like, optimized hanging protocols, multidimensional tools, how they would make a difference in your interpretation efficiency?
Yeah. So, you know, following what our other panelists have said, so anything that minimizes the user inputs and maximizes the ability of a radiologist to visualize 3 dimensions in their own mind, what is going on in the patient, as provided by the medical imaging, by information in the medical charts, is helpful. So these sorts of tools, hanging protocols, the multidimensional, like, something like a very accessible, very navigatable, multi-planar reconstruction viewer, and hotkeys and an interface that allows individual radiologists to be very fluent and develop fluency with that understanding is very helpful. So whether Visage or any other PACS vendor developer can further refine that interface to the extent that that's possible. That is very valuable.
And I think hanging protocols are the most efficient tool in radiology. And my opinion is that if you have an optimized hanging protocol, the efficiency gains from that could outpace all other current tools combined. When you think about the time you spend navigating a patient jacket, finding a prior, rearranging the images, rearranging them to get back to where you were, you overall spend more time using a computer doing that than doing what you should be doing, like Dr. Saeed said, of looking at the images and providing value to the patient. So being able to take a hanging protocol and just erase all that non-radiology computer activity is just it's an amazing thing for efficiency and for burnout mitigation. And with all the efficiency things we're talking about, you flip them over and it's quality and safety. So getting more time focused on doing radiology and not the computer. So with Visage in particular, they've approached hanging protocols very differently than all the other platforms. They have multiple layers to the organization of the patient jacket. So instead of just a kind of a linear run through on your matching rules or just taking that first step of putting the images on the screen and now do radiology. But for most of us, when the images are on the screen, we then use the computer before we get to do radiology again. So being able to incorporate all of that activity to erase those mouse miles, erase those clicks, and just do eyeballs on patient images and valuable content in the report.
Yeah. No, one of the hot things in radiology right now is cloud, and a lot of sites are moving to cloud. Dr. Said, can you just speak in general how you see the move to cloud potentially benefiting radiology compared to the existing model of having your PACS running on premises?
Yeah, for sure. So we're currently a Visage site, and we recently made the move to cloud about 3 weeks ago. And so right away, what the radiologists will notice as far as an efficiency gain when you do move to cloud is going to be a fast image load time. And so those images, load pretty quick, which honestly was the case, before cloud. But now, instead of relying on an image archive, where if your images were not, or the studies were not in the cache, now the entire image archive is available to me instantaneously. So what does that mean? At an academic institution, if I want to teach a resident about a particular case, I can quickly do a report search. I can find, some rare disease entity or some rare finding based on, some wording or some logic that is located in that report, and I can pull that case up instantaneously. So there's both a benefit from the clinical side when I'm providing clinical radiology, and also from the teaching side. And finally, a big benefit when I interact with, my referring providers, where again, I have to look perhaps at older cases that may have previously been hidden in the archive that require a larger load time. Now those images are available instantaneously.
Very good. Well, we're drawing to the end of our time. I'd like to give all of our panelists a chance to offer some advice to our viewers out there. Dr. Davis, if you could go first, can you give some advice to radiologists and institutions that are looking to get more efficiency out of their enterprise imaging solutions?
Yeah, I think I think the advice I would give actually is different for institutions than I would give for radiologists. As an individual radiologist, I think that it is important that we learn the systems that we're using. I think oftentimes we're so busy trying to get a study read that we don't take the time to take a step back and say what actually is available within the platform. So, there's a lot of tools that are available in Visage that will make us efficient right now. Learning how to use hotkeys, I think, is very helpful. Learning how to leverage your own personal hanging protocols is also another piece that can be leveraged really well. And learning how to use like mouse functionality and mouse hotkeys and items like that. Sometimes it's hard for us to do that if we've kind of gotten used to doing it one way and need to learn how to be more efficient in another direction. So that would be the thing that I would recommend to radiologists. At Yale, we actually started having monthly sessions with Visage where we ask questions to them, like how do we do auto link scrolling? How do we create NPRs on the fly? How do we do certain tasks that we know are there, but we don't necessarily use every day, so we don't necessarily know how to use in a facile way. So that education, I think, is key for us individually. On the institutional side, I think that the institutions are often focused, especially right now, on things like image diagnosis, new tools, a lot of tools for image diagnosis. But as we've heard on this call today, that's not where the efficiency lies. The efficiency lies in the way that the tools interact with the radiologist and into the report. So investing in these types of tools, as opposed to investing in, say, AI imaging diagnosis, is probably a better way to support your radiologist staffing right now.
That's a great point. Dr. Pepin, any words of advice from you?
We heard one comment earlier about being fluent in the system, and I think that's number one. You're going to be a resident at one place for 4 years. You're going to work at one place in your career for many years. So becoming really fluent and facile on the system will probably be the biggest bang for your buck from the start, is that you're no longer wondering how to do something, or you're no longer taking the long way to do something. So learn from your colleagues. Don't be afraid to read the manual. Some packs have really helpful manuals, others don't. But if you find yourself not doing something, you guys should ask yourself, are you not doing this because you don't know how, or because the system has made it really too hard to do? And is that a quality trade-off that we're making from an efficiency standpoint or an education standpoint? And then for everything you're doing in radiology, ask yourself, should you have to do this to practice radiology? Is this a click I should have to make? Is this a keystroke I should have to make? I would guess a lot of it, the answer is no. And then figure out how to get your system to do it, or demand more from your vendors, which brings me to the last point of to not accept the status quo. Accepting the status quo is how we ended up with a market full of legacy systems that don't work with the current practice and utilization of radiology and imaging science.
Those are some great points. Dr. Said, how about you?
I think the other panelists put it, really well. I especially like Dr. Davis's point of, take the time to learn your system. Yes, there is a time investment, especially if you put in a new system you put in a new, viewer. There is a time investment, to this journey, but in the long run, it will pay off. To add to what some of the other panelists have already said, I would say is, as an individual radiologist, try to find where the gaps are in efficiency, right? So what do I have to do repeatedly every day? What is there a gap in interoperability where I have to, it requires me an additional click here, an additional click, there. It requires me to type where I already have a, dictaphone or a microphone right at my disposal. So where are those little gaps, and how can you bring them all together, either by using alternate input devices, or what we do at our institution is I code a custom software program. It's basically custom hotkeys that I develop on my workstation, and that is deployed across the entire department, so that not only can I utilize the tools that are created, but that my colleagues can benefit from what I have, developed, and hopefully as a group, we can become, kind of more efficient as an, institution utilizing that. I will say that, you wonder why don't vendors just do this? And why isn't this interoperability just baked in? The reason is we have how many radiologists on this panel? 4 radiologists on this panel. I guarantee you, 2 from the same institution. I guarantee you, none of them works the same. So there are no 2 same institutions, and there are no 2 same radiologists. And so that's what brings up a challenge, and I think makes custom solutions attractive in this space.
Right, very good. Dr. Tu, any parting words from you?
Yeah, so I think the other panels have very nicely addressed what individual radiologists can do to optimize their own efficiency. I think I would then address what institutions and perhaps vendors might think about. I do believe that an institution might spend, I don't know, millions of dollars purchasing a new PACS system or new technological solutions. And yet, I believe a major blind spot is simply institutional investment in training, dedicated time, and fostering a culture of understanding these tools. This is something I'm invested in my own institution in terms of teaching, development, reference materials, and like Dr. Saeed had referenced at his own institution, the development of tools that are then disseminated for the benefit of a group practice, I think are really critical institutional investments, which I believe are under leveraged. I would also say, echoing what some other panelists have said, that in vendors, there's this developers of these softwares, there's this perhaps focus on the development of tools that will aid diagnosis and perhaps an underemphasis on tools which could improve efficiency. I've actually spoken with developers at Visage, and I've said, hey, this tool would really help every single study. And we said, hey, these efficiency-based tools are, we could do that, but we're really working on something that's going to help for brain cancer diagnosis. And let me tell you, something that's going to help 1% on every single study is far more valuable than something that's going to help 20% in 1 in 1,000 cases. So I would encourage people who are in the commercial space to think about this and to really bring their focus on that. In addition, with institutions thinking about how they can emphasize training and investment in multiple different ways, not just bringing on new technology.
All right, very good. So Amy, I'd like to let you close. What are some take-home points from the report that Signify has produced? Can you talk about that a little bit, and then maybe tell people how they can get a copy?
Absolutely. And really just I appreciate in the industry right now, there is a lot of excitement around, to the panelist's point around this new technology, generative AI, agentic AI, clinical AI. But there is something around the interpretation efficiency and the critical timing that it is in the industry, and how these institutions and radiologists are being faced with this pressure. But I'd say importantly, it's not about trying to change everything and do everything all at once in terms of all these suggestions around hotkeys or hanging protocols or kind of roll out mass training, although all will contribute. It's about how do you pace that within your organization, evaluate the biggest drivers for your specific team, radiologist, workflow, or institution, and start small, be consistent, and really just echoing, kind of looking at 1% improvement compounded can offer significant relief to the workforce. And so really it's about that small incremental improvements that will benefit you long term, rather than seeing this as a big mountain that you've got to do all at once. So that's my big key takeaway. In terms of finding the reports, you can find it at the Signify Research website, available in our white papers section.
All right, those are really some great points. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for being with us today. Amy Thompson of Signify Research, Dr. Melissa Davis of Yale University, Dr. Eric Pepin of Radiology Associates of North Texas, Dr. Nicholas Saeed of Duke University, and Dr. Long Tu of Yale University. Everybody, thanks so much. I really enjoyed the discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Signing off for the Imaging Wire, my name is Brian Casey.